On February 6th of this year, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit southern Turkey and northwest Syria, leaving over 50,000 people dead, destroyed 100,000 buildings, and left more than 1 million people homeless. Whenever there is a humanitarian crisis, people rise to the occasion, donating what they can to help ease the suffering of those affected. For years, debate has raged about whether or not all of the funds people generously donate actually make it to those it was meant for. Adam Whittington, who is CEO of Project Rescue Children, has been on the ground in Turkey distributing essentials for those affected by the earthquake. While documenting the work he and his volunteers have been doing, he has been vocal in calling out the apparent lack of help from the larger charities who have collectively raised tens of millions of dollars. And Adam is with me today from somewhere in the world. Adam, thank you so much for speaking with me once again.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on again. It's a pleasure.
Now, whenever we speak, it is always a heavy topic, unfortunately, but the work that you've done in Turkey is out of character for PRC in terms of, from what I've seen on social media, it looked like more of a humanitarian visit versus the normal fight against human trafficking or child sex trafficking.
It is out of our remit, humanitarian aid, but it's not something new to us. We have been doing a combination of being involved with child trafficking and exploitation and humanitarian aid in Ukraine since the war started. So it's a known fact. It's been proven in all wars and natural disasters in the past that when there is a war or a natural disaster, children are vulnerable, children are trafficked, and children are exploited. So a combination of those with the Turkey situation, with the earthquakes, prompted us, should we get there or not? And we basically decided as a team that we should get there and at least assess the situation on the ground, because it's impossible to really know what's going on through media or just watching social media. So we wanted to get there and see for ourselves, is there something we can do for the children? And that's what we did.
The earthquake came up obviously in mainstream media, and the images are shocking in terms of the devastation. Is it as bad as it looks in all the photos and videos that have come out, or is it not quite as bad as it appears, or so much worse?
So much worse. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mind you, I've never been to an earthquake hit area, but the sheer magnitude of the devastation, everywhere you turn your head, there's devastation. It's not like you see usually, in most cases, there'll be like a few buildings broken and destroyed from an earthquake. This is whole cities completely annihilated. And some people see buildings still standing. They have to come down because they're broken, and you can't see it on images and videos. But when you get there, you can see all the standing buildings are cracked in half, and they must come down. So it's just it's a cat. It's just a devastating thing to see, and knowing that you're walking around and there's so many people still missing and dead around you, walking around, I think it's a situation that nobody can be prepared for. No government, no emergency services just cannot deal with the sheer magnitude of what has happened.
The aftershocks have been, four magnitude and above, but they have been happening. Even the last time I checked, the last one, which was around a magnitude 4, happened a couple of days ago. So is there trauma in that constant feeling of the earth
Yeah,
moving
there's
for those who
fear.
survived?
Yeah, I think, you have obviously the construction and everything that needs to be fixed and rebuilt, but psychologically, I've spoken, I've met so many people. I've been there myself through three of the big after quakes. I think one of the last one was 5.1. People are petrified. So psychologically, people are sleeping in tents and cars. They refuse to go near buildings, and this is going to be especially for the kids who have experienced these earthquakes. It's just a shocking thing for everybody, and I think it's something that is going to take a long time psychologically for people to even get over if they ever can.
In the affected areas, in the buildings that are still standing, I understand a lot of them are damaged and have to come down, but are there any buildings that are able to be lived in? Is there any power, running water, and just those necessities?
For the first few weeks, no. Uh, as far as the water and electricity, no. And now we went, and I myself went with my guys and team to all the major cities, the three major cities, and there was nothing. There was one in Marash, which is the northern city that was hit. We went everywhere, and there was one toilet. It was a broken petrol station that was smashed down, and everybody was queuing up for the one toilet that was not working, but that was the only thing. And so there are a few buildings just outside the affected areas of the epicenters that are still livable, but people are petrified. People won't go into buildings. That's how bad the scare factor is.
And are there any hospitals standing, or have they had to make makeshift tents into hospitals?
Yeah, what they're doing now, it's basically everything's turned into these three major cities are turned into tent cities. So, sporting ovals, hospital grounds, parks, anywhere that's outside that's got a flat surface, the government and smaller NGOs are building tent cities. So people are just, a lot of people have their own tents, which are summer tents, really thin. It's just getting over winter now, but people have been freezing. So hospitals are getting back up and running. I mean, things now, it's been a number of weeks. So things have been switched back on, like the electricity. There is running water in some places. So it's slowly, but not enough's being done to help the people.
And the incredible followers and supporters of PRC have gotten behind the work that you're doing in Turkey, and they have started to donate for, or have been donating, I should say, for the work that you've been doing over there. What money have you raised, and what have you been able to do with all of that?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think we have the best followers and supporters on the planet because they are so proactive and you know, as long as we keep showing transparency, they love it and they love to see where their actual money, their donations going. So I think it was like after 12 hours, or I think it was half a day or something when we initially put out that we're on the ground. And I think it was like 20 or $30,000 just then. It just poured in. So I think in total it's like 80,000 something. And we're a nobody charity, right? We're not a disaster relief charity. We're just a child trafficking and exploitation charity. So for that amount of money to come to us from people who trust us is pretty incredible for us anyway. We can do a lot with $1,000. We can do a lot with it. So to get approximately $80,000 is just phenomenal, and we can only thank our followers and donors who have stepped up to help the people of Turkey. Syria, obviously, we cannot get into Syria right now, but we are making efforts to go into Syria. So we haven't uh, closed the door there, but people are donating for Syria and Turkey.
What relief and what items have you been able to provide for the people of Turkey with the money that's been raised?
Yeah, well, within the first 3 weeks, we pretty much given out 10,000. It was just over 10,000 items, a wide range of items. And instead of guessing what people need, you have to get on the ground and you have to ask the people, what do you need? What is needed? Blah, blah, blah. And obviously, it was freezing. I mean, the first earthquake that hit on the 6th of February, I think it was -5. It hit at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 a.m. And so people were outside, the ones who made it out. And it was like -5. It was freezing. The week I got there, which is about 4 days after the first earthquake, it was freezing. And I came from Sweden, which is cold anyway, but to get to that part of Turkey, which is usually warmish, it was freezing. So the biggest hurdle was to keep people alive, um, through blankets, through clothes, gloves, beanies for the kids' heads, anything. So we basically established that this is what the people need, nothing else. They needed to survive the cold. Forget about toys and even food. Like food was, it was very scarce, but people could survive at least a few days without eating a good meal. It was the cold, literally the freeze. So we went out and just basically people started donating. We went to the local ATM, took it out, took cash out, which is frowned upon by the charity commissions because you can't do that. But we're not here for anybody. We're here for the kids, and so we took cash out, went straight to the local markets outside of the affected areas, because nothing was really open, and we basically just cleaned out all the blankets, from the local market, beanies for people's heads, gloves, socks as well. And we just took them and we just drove, to all the affected areas. And we're basically just, like drop shipping, stopping so many times in different locations and just people coming up, swarming the car. They were so desperate. And as soon as they saw us giving blankets, which was a major one, it was like bees swarming a honeypot. Really, really was. It was really difficult to see emotionally. It was really tough because these people are desperate and there was just nothing there, nobody helping, the people at all. So we've given out so many different items since. I think one of our last big drops was a big van full of footballs for the kids, to give kids in this play center something to do. You have to understand everything's demolished. Kids are kicking rocks around. There's nothing to do. So we decided to start giving out sporting equipment, footballs, which has been so popular, with the kids. And you can just see them having, a little bit of relief from the pain and the anger that they've experienced. So we've given food, jackets, clothes, pens, coloring in things, crowns for the children, pretty much everything, that we could get our hands on. We basically cleaned out from the shops and markets.
One of my favorite videos that is on your social media was of you giving out the beanies to the kids. Because of how you were
Yeah.
doing it, it was this beautiful moment between humans, but it was light and it was fun and they were happy and grateful. And I think you joking around and it not being such a serious affair just took all of the anxiety out of it, if that makes sense. Like it's just this beautiful
Totally.
exchange,
Yeah.
of people together. So this leads me to the larger charities. So there's a few things that I want to read. So everyone has to excuse me for looking to the side of my screen. The ACCC, shortly after this happened, reported that there is a spike in online scams in the name of catastrophes. And they went on to say that by donating to the larger charities, so Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, World Vision, UNICEF, and all of the other larger charities, you have more chance of the money going where it's supposed to go. Now, you have been very vocal and you're already shaking your head, about what you have seen from the larger charities on the ground. So let's start with, what aid have you seen going to the Turkish people from the larger charities?
Well, when I was there for 3 weeks, I'm talking now within the say first 4 weeks. What aid did I see from UNICEF, Red Cross? Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. They weren't there.
So,
They were not there at all. And I know that because I was there and I was asking specific questions to police officers, to military, to security who's securing the tent cities and where people are housing, and football stadiums where they're giving out food, and me and my volunteers specifically asked, and if I couldn't speak Turkish, our Turkish volunteers asked the questions. So it was very clear, where is UNICEF? Where is Red Cross? Where is all the who? Who's UNICEF? Who's Red Cross? And this is not one location. Marish, the other cities, Gaziantep and Hatay. Hatay was a big one as well. So Hatay and Marish were the two major cities. We spent hours and days in all those cities. So it wasn't like I just went to one location and didn't see. So nothing. Nobody knows who they were and where they were, and that's the truth. But they were posting crap, fancy photos of kids, looking desperate for food and whatever. They weren't there at all.
okay, so I have spent the last several days trawling through social media for all of the sites of all of the big organizations. So this is where I'm going to read from the side of the screen again. Okay, so Red Cross has been posting videos about what they're planning. And this is the US Red Cross site. And they have featured a woman named Susan Malandrino, and she appeared on CNN on March 14th. And she said, or she was saying, that cash donations are best so that they can give vouchers to people so that they can purchase the things that they need at these markets that are popping up. So let me start with that. Have you seen these markets and community markets popping up for people if they had cash vouchers to be able to purchase supplies?
What a lot of horse shit. I've never seen or heard that before. And I'm speaking from the Turkish people, right? Because I've spent a lot of time and even all the people that we give out, all the tens of, the thousands of items, I always ask questions, and if I can't communicate, the volunteers ask questions in the local language. And it's very clear they're not getting any help whatsoever. So these people coming out saying they're doing this or they're planning that is total rubbish. And I'll stand in front of any court, jury, or judge, or anybody and say the same thing, because it's not happening. And it's the Turkish people, the Syrian people who are so affected and just not getting any help. And people are profiting off their disaster.
So then we go to the International Federation of Red Cross. They stated that Hatay, I think you said is how it's pronounced, province was the first affected area. And according to their website, they have raised $19,152,630 of a target $350 million that they're hoping to raise. And just as a side note, they have, according to their own website, have raised $408,174,695 of a $550 million goal for Ukraine. So that's a whole separate conversation, but just while I was in there, UNICEF...
Don't start me on Ukraine. Don't start me on Ukraine, because it's the same fucking thing. Don't start me on Ukraine. Yeah.
So then UNICEF posted on February 14th that they had shipped 73 tons of supplies to Syria and Turkey from their Copenhagen and Dubai ports. They also posted a video of CEO Catherine Russell and her 2-day visit to Turkey, which we'll get into in a moment. And her main point of the video was about the psychosocial support that is needed for those affected, which we've talked about, the effects on the kids of after the trauma of what's gone on. Save the Children is raising funds, and there are videos of volunteers on the ground in their vests. World Vision is definitely raising money. There are a few posts on their social media about Turkey and Syria, but they're also focusing on a whole lot of other areas. What I will say is, with your social media, with PRC's social media, there is a flood of raw video and raw photos of everything that you're seeing, the damage that is there, you talking to people, the volunteers translating for you and handing out products. There's even the things that you've purchased being counted and loaded into the cars. With all of these organizations across their social media, highly edited and highly emotive imagery. But what I did notice when you start going through the feeds, a lot of it is the same imagery being used over and over and over again. And a lot of it is shots of the devastation interspersed with 3 people in vests in different areas. But there isn't actually any photos of the work being done on the ground. So this is why I was curious as to what you have seen. So there aren't any tents that are set up by the Red Cross or UNICEF or anything like that to give people temporary housing.
Zero, absolute zero. And I can start on 2 perfect examples of what you've just spoken about. Firstly, the CEO of UNICEF, total horse crap. Total horse crap. You know, and how do I know? And why am I so confident to say it's a total scam? It's because I saw it with my own eyes. You know, I would never say anything public if it's not true or I don't know factual. And I can't get any more factual than seeing it with my own eyes. And we went to Gaziantep, like we were actually, I stayed in Gaziantep for the whole time, and we were just driving to the different locations all day and nights and stuff. So I used Gaziantep as, it was probably one of the only places that had a hotel available, but it was still touchy to stay there. But anyway, so Gaziantep was the location that the CEO of UNICEF did her photo shoot in the tent that's yellow. Firstly, it's not a UNICEF tent. It's a Turkish government organization. It was owned by the local governor of Gaziantep. So that was their tent. We arrived, right? It was perfect timing because it's basically a small tent city that they've created in the central park of Gaziantep, with security on either side, and all the people affected living in these government, all of them, tents, no UNICEF tents. So there's this one yellow tent that you've seen me post, and it's at the car park of this tent city. And it's basically, it was just a few tables for kids to draw, you know, a sort of a space for kids to be kids, which was great. And it was organized by the local governor, mayor, I'm not too sure which one it was, but so that was it. So we'd been there a few days before because we were giving out blankets and everything to the people in the tents in that park. So then we went there another day. It was like, I think it was the second or third time we went there. We went there and parked in the same spot, spoke to the same security guards, hello, and gave them some drinks and chocolate as well to the security guards. And then there was a bit of a crowd around the tent. And obviously, a lot of people can't speak English. So I had Turkish volunteers with me, and we went over and we saw there was a UNICEF sign now, which wasn't there the last 2 times we've been there. So there was a UNICEF blue sign on the yellow tent out the front, and there was one to the side. It's like, what's going on here? And there was a bit of a crowd. It was not normal, and you could see two people in UNICEF vests the light brown with the UNICEF blue on the back. And there was a guy in a black t-shirt who didn't look Turkish, with tattoos, and he had UNICEF in white across his t-shirt, and he had like two cameras, professional cameras, hanging around his neck. So what's going on here? So we went over to sort of the entrance of the tent, and there was kids in there and everything on their tables. And one of the PRC volunteers went over and asked to somebody who looked important, what's going on in Turkish. And they said, firstly, who are you? And what organization are you from? And then he came over to us and asked me in English what charity. And I said, oh, we're an international charity, just helping kids. And so they walked away from me and the volunteers. And then my volunteer went over and again and asked, what's going on? He said, because it was a bit of kerfuffle. And they said, somebody very important from UNICEF is coming within 30 minutes, and we would like everybody to leave. That's what they said to us. They didn't want us there. So they got security, and they sort of made people leave if you weren't a victim of the earthquakes. So we sort of went to the other side of the road, and then you could see the cars coming in for UNICEF. There was a couple of UN cars as well, came into the car park. Anyway, you couldn't get close enough to take pictures, but 30 minutes after that happened, they all left. And we decided to leave because we were busy doing some stuff, but we went back the next day, and that's when it was all closed. UNICEF signs were taken away, and we spoke to the security guards who were there that day and said, what? And I said, is UNICEF here now? And I got the PRC volunteer to translate, and they said, no. This was just photo opportunity. They even knew that it was just a total photo opportunity that UNICEF was doing to promote that they were doing things for kids psychologically, helping them in this tent. And it was just complete bullcrap, complete nonsense. And then the UNICEF CEO puts it on Twitter, with the exact images of her sitting in the tent that I'm talking about with one of the volunteers from UNICEF, who has never even been there, wasn't even there except for 5 minutes, taking that picture with the professional. He was actually from England. One of the volunteers spoke to him, and he spoke English. And so you have an English photographer from UNICEF, probably flown in, for a day, taking some great pictures, flown out. And that's what they're using on social media to say that they're helping the kids. And it's so angry, not just for me to see it, blatant scam to say they're helping the kids when you're not. It's for the people, it's devastating for the people to be used as tools so UNICEF can profit financially. And the people don't understand this is what's happening. So it was a real, really disgusting and sad thing to see, that these large companies, I don't call them charities because they're not charitable, they're billion-dollar organizations, just taking the piss out of the people. And ask anybody on the ground in those cities what's UNICEF, Red Cross, and the others are doing. And they'll say the same thing as what I'm saying. So I have no issue expressing the truth from the Turkish people.
It defies belief, because it's one thing to see a CEO come in for a photo opportunity, but you would think that that would be happening amongst work being done on the ground, and it would be a little less offensive. I mean, it's still offensive, but it would be a little less offensive if there was actual work being done, because we know the CEO isn't going to come in and do the hard stuff on the ground.
Those two volunteers, the two UNICEF volunteers with the vest that were standing outside the tent when we were standing outside the tent, they didn't go in that tent to help the kids. And if you look at the pictures they took, it looks like they're actually there inside volunteering all the time for the kids. I swear on my kids, they were in there for no longer than the CEO was of UNICEF, and they all left. including the two volunteers. Photo with a professional image, make sure the UNICEF sign is there, make sure the UNICEF vest with the volunteers in the picture, and then we'll go to the next location and do the same thing.
This isn't about UNICEF, but after the Australian bushfires in 2019, 2020, because they raged through the new year, there were questions raised about the funds that were being raised through Red Cross going to those that are actually affected. And in June of 2020, the Director of Australian Services, Noel Clement, was forced to deny that they were holding the half of the funds that they had raised for future disasters. The excuse given was, well, disaster relief is something that takes time because it takes time to heal. So we need to have enough funds to get us through the entire rebuilding process. And I guess there is logic to that, but at the same time, you're witnessing what's going on the ground. Can these people wait for the funds and the goods and all of that to be delivered to them at a later stage?
No, it's not even a disaster relief setup then, is it? People, are affected by a disaster. They need aid. They need humanitarian supplies immediately, not months later. So what's the point? Most people, you would probably get people dying because they can't get basic necessities like blankets. Okay, we'll wait. We've got billions of dollars. We won't spend, let's hire some on a ship, or we'll send them on a truck. We don't have enough money to put them on a plane. Total horse crap. And I mean, I don't know what the situation was with bushfires, but I'm expressing what I have seen, one in Ukraine since the war, and two in Turkey. It's happening, the same thing. These large charities, and they were not anywhere to be seen, but they're posting things to say that they're there. They could be there now with one or two people. I don't know. I'm not there policing what the other charities are doing. I'm expressing to the world that, really be careful with fancy. And this is one policy we have, is we need to post and be transparent with raw material. Don't edit it. Don't do anything. Just put it out there so people can see this is what's happening. I bet everything I have, these large charities just edits and fancy up their social media posts to draw in the attention. They're not genuine. They're not. There's no transparency. But again, it's been happening for decades, and I don't think it's ever going to change because, as I mentioned, they're a gigantic organization supported by, I'm talking about the Red Cross, Save the Children. I'm talking about UNICEF, the UN. They're all supported by governments, all of them. And it doesn't matter what I say or you say, or 100 people come out and say, this is what they're doing, and here's the evidence of the UNICEF CEO basically scamming for 30 minutes so you can get some donation. I mean, that's the reality of it. It's not going to change. It's not going to change, and I think people need to understand they need to be super careful where they put their money out. And if some government comes out and says it's safer to donate to the big charities because there's a lot of scams, well, you've got to question that as well. I believe anyway. It's really opened my eyes as well to the, you always hear about these stories. You always hear about, oh, don't donate to that large charity because they're this or that. But to see such an important person in a large, one of the biggest charities in the world, UNICEF, to come in and do that, it's just devastating for the people on the ground who are suffering. While these people, I mean, what's her salary? I'd love to know the CEO of UNICEF's salary.
It's funny you say that because I did try and find out the salaries of all the CEOs of the companies. The only one I was able to find was the CEO of the Red Cross, Gail McGovern, and so she is still the CEO, but the only salary I could find was her 2018 one, which was $694,000. There were a lot of articles online saying that some of these CEOs are earning in the millions, but there was nothing that I could confirm. So I would say
Sure,
that's a
sure.
starting rate for a lot
Yeah,
of these people,
yeah.
which to
It's
me is
just
shocking.
shocking. It's shocking. I mean, it's even the same, right? We go off a little bit here. It's even the same when we see other child trafficking and exploitation, uh, sex trafficking charities. You know, I've just received information from a large organization in the US. They've just put out their own figures, IRS statements, so their tax returns and all this sort of stuff. And there's 4 full-time employees. This is the information I've received, and I'm shocked. They do exactly what PRC does, except they don't do anything. Again, they fancy up videos and stuff. $7.7 million in salaries in 1 year.
For
$7.7
four
million for
employees.
4 people, for 4 employees, and they profit $80 million is in the bank. $80 million. Jesus fuck me. I tell you what, if we had 1 ounce of that, we could do so much for the kids. And this is just, I get frustrated because we work our ass off. We do so much for kids in so many different countries for so little. Like to what I meant before, $1,000, we could do so much for these people in Turkey, which we have. But to see what others are doing and getting away with it, you know, the mainstream media won't touch anybody like this. They prefer to go after some small charity and put out propaganda, you know, who actually are doing things. And that's the way the world is. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you put out there as factual or here's what they've done. And people, you know, considering how tough financial situations are nowadays for everybody across the world, I think people need to be really careful. And you know, do your due diligence. Don't take social media as, you know, gospel.
Just before we move on, I want to let everybody know I did reach out to several of the organizations that we have been talking to. I tried to contact, I did get the office number and the cell number of the appropriate person to speak to at UNICEF. I left messages, I called several times, I got no response. I have contacted certain individuals that are featured in a lot of the social media posts. I got no response. The Save the Children, I called their main number within their operating hours. I didn't even get a human that answered the phone at the times that I called. I just got a automated message saying that these are our normal business hours, which I was calling within. I will say, though, I did get a response just before we began filming from IFRC, the International Fund of the Red Cross. They said they would get back to me with answers. They already have my questions. They haven't answered them yet. So I have let them know that we are filming now. And if they can get the responses to me before it goes live, I will put an add-on at the end of the interview with the responses they've given
Sure.
me to the questions that I've asked. So this isn't a one-sided conversation, or I tried to
No,
open it up to these
no,
people. And I know that on social media, you have tagged these people, you've put a public call out to them. Has anyone responded to
no.
your?
I've been listen, I only sort of deal with like what I personally experienced. So for me, I would love the CEO of UNICEF to answer questions directly, because I saw her, I saw what she did, what she's not doing, the lies. So I can only say, you know, on that thing, you know, I know Red Cross is not there. They're doing it with Red Crescent, which is the Turkey equivalent. So people don't understand that you're donating to the Red Cross, but they're not there. They're actually giving the money to Red Crescent, which is another charity, which is run by the Turkish, which very closely connected to the Turkish government. And there's situations where there's articles coming out that have been coming out, and there was a lot of talk about it when I was there by the locals, that Red Crescent and others are selling tents and selling food to people when they should be giving. It's just double dipping everywhere. There's a lot of corruption in Turkey. People have to be very careful. Um, that's all I say. And I'm not here to attack this and that. I'm here to tell you this is exactly what's going on based on my experience, and what I saw, who I spoke to. Again, I'll put my hand up, and I'll have thousands of witnesses behind me to confirm every single thing I've said. So I have no, and because it's just not fair. It's just comes down to not being fair for these people, who have lost everything, and to see others' profits on people's losses is just not right at all.
And it's
That's
also
why I'm speaking to you about it.
and it's also not right for the people. There is inflation across the globe at the moment. People are doing it hard, but we see other humans in pain and hurting, and we want to help as much as we can, whether that be $5 or $500. But you would like to think that that hard-earned money is going
Yeah,
to these
yeah.
people that actually need it. Moving on,
And that's
just
why we get a lot. That's why we get a lot of comments and people donating now, because they just love the transparency. People want to see where their money goes, and that's the whole purpose of PRC, whether it's child trafficking and exploitation or helping out with humanitarian aid. That's what we'll always do.
moving on to the human trafficking. There have been reports of kidnappings and attempted kidnappings that were happening in Turkey. Is that a reality,
Yeah,
or it is?
it is. Yeah, it actually is, but it's a very, very touchy subject. Even we experienced some people didn't really want to talk about it. We also know there was one uh, person came out on Twitter. I don't know his name, but he's a Turkish um, somebody with a bit of pull, a bit of I think it was like a big businessman in Turkey. Anyway, he came out on Twitter apparently, and I didn't see it, but I was told by the Turkish people. Um, and he tweeted something about children being trafficked and something needs to be done. And apparently, he was arrested 3 or 4 days later for that, for speaking out. So people are scared to touch this subject. It is happening. There's confirmed cases of one was a classic case of somebody going into one of the hospitals that was damaged, and there was children there, and he actually pretended to be a doctor, acted as a doctor to deal with one of the children, and he was stopped taking out the child. He was beaten, and everything. So it is happening. There's many children missing that's not being talked about. There's a few smaller organizations and charities on Twitter coming out with this missing kids, which is just a common occurrence when there's a natural disaster. It happens, vulnerable kids, they will get taken. Traffickers love these situations. Wars and natural disasters, as I've mentioned, are a trafficker's dream. You know, there's kids missing, kids have no parents now because they've, died or whatever. And it's just how it is. So it is absolutely happening. Absolutely.
There's also been reports that there are Syrians that have crossed the border and raped young teen girls in Turkey and then obviously go back to wherever they came from. So is that a thing as well?
I don't know. I have
Okay.
heard stories, but I can't confirm whether yes or no. But it is the talk of locals. Whether it's happened, I don't know.
And will we ever have any true idea about the numbers of children or even young women that are trafficked during this whole crisis?
No, it's the same. It's the same with any disaster or war. I mean, look at the Ukraine. There's so many figures out there that So many women and children were trafficked out of the Ukraine or on the borders with European countries. I never ever take statistics for granted. Always add on um, a lot more than what government officials put out. Um, so the answer is no. We'll never know, but it's definitely not a few. There's a lot. How many? I don't know.
You, even though you're no longer in Turkey, you still have people on the ground doing the
Yeah.
work that you started?
Yep.
And
We do. Yeah. We actually have some more now that are in Ankara. So Ankara is the capital, which is not affected by the earthquake, but so many thousands and tens of thousands of people. You got to understand, we're not just talking about a few people here. Like the Marash is like a population of 1.1 million. Hatay, which is one of the worst affected as well, 1.5 million people in the city. They're all gone. Like there's nobody living around. So they're all either across the country, they've gone to the capital, Ankara or Istanbul, other cities that they just don't want to go back to. The devastation and because they've lost people, everybody knows somebody who's been killed. So it's devastating. So we have people now still on those Marash, Hatay, Gaziantep, and also in Ankara now. So because what's happening, a lot of the kids affected by those earthquake areas are now spread across Turkey. So we're trying to organize some small children events in Ankara to give something to the children so they can, be kids. So we're still distributing things. We're changing the items because now it's warming up a little bit. So blankets are not really the major um, need. Clothes and stuff are sanitary items. Classic example, which nobody talks about, and it's really frowned upon actually to talk about, is women period pads. It's a major problem for the women and the girls, and it was actually one of the things that one of my volunteers said to me: "You can't talk about that. It's a woman's thing." Right? He's a local Turkish guy. So you have something that's so serious and so needed for women and girls, but it's one of those things that you can't really, who wants some period pads? You can't do that, So we've been giving out like thousands of period pads, just buying them and handing them out. As soon as we see a woman or girl in the crowd that we're helping, we just you know we give them out. Babies' nappies, another big one that we're helping out with. So the items are changing depending on the situation, but things are calming down. Calming down meaning there's starting to be some little bit of organization, but it's a massive cleanup project now. There's trucks, massive trucks going in and out of the city 24/7. You see them everywhere, and they're just full of rubble, full of broken buildings and pieces, and they're just dumping them outside the city. And that's all that's happening now. Clean up, clean up. And people are trying to have some sort of, there's no shops, there's no restaurants, there's no cafes, there's nothing open. It's just a disaster. And so much more needs to be done by these big charities, by the international community. Don't think now because it's not in the media, who have just completely wiped it out. It's like the biggest natural disaster ever, and it's just totally swept under the carpet after 2 weeks of media getting their glory shots of buildings falling down. Now it's disappeared. Now everyone's back onto the Ukraine war. Put some effort into the Turkish and Syrian people, for God's sake.
It's that news cycle, which I think has become quite a sick thing, that it was said during COVID, if it bleeds, it leads. So when there is a disaster, they salivate over it and go straight to it. But as soon as it's not the most interesting thing, or there's another disaster or another thing that they can instill fear with, that's what they're going to. And it's not.
It's so true.
Despite all the things that are said, it's not about, unfortunately, the people that are suffering. It's irrelevant. It's a good story, and it's not, for the most part, touching the people that are here in the US or in Australia, and it's only those of us that have friends or family in Turkey that are asking the questions or who are involved in actually helping or seeking out alternative news sources that are aware of the ongoing devastation.
Yeah,
And the photos and videos just blow my mind. I can't even comprehend what it would be to live through an earthquake of that magnitude, but then to look at a place that you once knew and it is unrecognizable. And I assume it's
it is totally, totally.
still,
It's like, somebody's just come along and dropped atomic bombs on these three cities, and it's like I said, it's not you driving or walking around. It's not like just one building. It's like flattened everywhere. And obviously, there's a lot of talk about the building regulations and that being half the problem as well. But regardless of all that, it's just a catastrophe, And yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. And I have to say, and I did meet some really, really great small charities who were there immediately. There was from Russia, Kazakhstan. There was the rescue teams, which I'm not talking about because there was a lot of rescue teams flown in from around the world, and I saw all of them. Japan, there was the Australians, the US. I'm talking about the rescue teams. I'm not talking about humanitarian aid helping the people. They were there just to search the buildings and doing an incredible job. And I witnessed the Japanese team go into these places, like spaces crawling in through slabs of broken concrete. And I've took a video of it actually. And all it takes is a split second and they're dead because it moves and then they'll be squashed like a pancake. I mean, just the incredible work that the rescue teams did. I have to take my hat off to them because incredible. The smaller charities there busting their ass off with their truck, like a van cooking food out of the back. And they've just driven from, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Russia, just to help the rescue teams with food. And so there were some amazing smaller charities doing great things, and it was really good to see. But these are the organizations, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who's not an organization, just people helping with very little money, doing what they could for the rescue teams and the people. I mean, it was just a devastating thing to see.
Moments like this, it really is about humanity and people coming together, and everybody's skill set is different and what they can offer is different to the person next to them. But when everybody comes together, it works as a cohesive unit.
Absolutely. And it was really good. Yeah. The nationalities, there was even Ukrainians there. So you could see like the Ukrainians working close with the Russians, and whether it was giving out food or the rescue team, didn't matter. And it was so good to see everything just put aside, all the political rubbish going on in the world put aside to help these, people who really need it. But now, sadly, like mentioned and you mentioned, it's sort of, what I can see is one of the worst earthquake disasters ever. And people are still desperate, like desperate. It's not getting any better for the people. It's just there's no more earthquakes, and they're settled down in their tent, which they're going to be in for not just a few months. The government says 12 months and they'll rebuild everything. No way on this planet. These people are going to be living in tents for at least 2 to 3 years, at least.
absolutely.
Longer.
I haven't been to the area, but I know just building in general, it takes time.
No way. There's too many buildings gone.
Exactly.
There's too much. If we're talking 5 buildings within a year, okay, I might believe you. But to talk about whole cities, no way. That's just not even realistic.
And
So
not
these people are going to be suffering in tents. We're going to obviously the next winter's going to come. They're going to be in tents. And I went into some of the tents. There's 6, 8, 10 people in one tent. You're going to talk about diseases. You're going to talk about all this other stuff that's going to come. So people really need to step up and stop ignoring Turkey and Syria and earthquake victims. So it's not going away.
And I imagine with the rebuilding, there is a hierarchy or a process as to which buildings get built first. And you're going to need hospitals and facilities like that that take precedence. So they will go up and they will probably take a couple of years to get up. And that's
Yeah,
before
yeah.
anybody looks at housing, but you've got to have that infrastructure for communities to be able to exist.
It's just a disaster. They're going to have to restart. I did hear that, one of the cities, I think, or two of them, they're going to relocate the whole city, like leave everything as it was and just rebuild cities somewhere else. So I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. It's devastating to see hospitals. There's the one hospital in Marish I saw with the whole side of the building down, as if somebody took a can opener, just split and right at the edge of the windows, halfway up, is the baby ward. It must be the new baby ward section with the incubators and everything, and they're just hanging as if they're going to fall out of the window, the building, because there is no windows. It's just split in half. Just devastating to see things like that. You know, how many babies were in there when it happened? And how many are missing? Just questions that I always ask myself when I see these type of images, or these locations where I go to and see. It's just heartbreaking.
PRC has launched a new arm, essentially, I don't know how else to word it, of the organization, Hope Children's Disaster Relief. So is that the organization that will now fund all of these humanitarian projects
Yeah,
that you go on?
absolutely. Well, I'm one, I don't like to sit around. I just like to, most people who know me, if I get a stupid idea, I'll just do it. This Hope Children's Disaster Relief, which is an organization, it's not a charity, because we're moving away from the charity crap, the red tape that does hold up a lot of things to help children, because you're bound by this or you're bound by. So it's an organization that it's a private organization. It's going to be independently funded by donations, and it is solely for helping children and their families during wars and natural disasters. As I said, PRC, it's not really their remit. It's a child trafficking and exploitation. So I decided to start a complete new identity, which is Hope. Um, and that's what it's going to do. And just seeing what is not happening in the Ukraine for the people, the children, and the same thing now in Turkey. And I can only imagine even worse in Syria for the people. I mean, these are not isolated events. We're talking, there's so many different wars. I mean, look at Palestine, look at Yemen, look at all, Iraq, and there's so many situations where kids need help. And I've come to the point now, being in Ukraine during the war, being now in Turkey, nothing is getting done for the kids. So I want to start Hope specifically to get people on the ground immediately, or as safe as possible, as quick as possible, and to start distributing whatever the kids and the families need immediately. And that is the goal of it. So look out UNICEF and Red Cross. You've got competition now, and it's time to start showing transparency and putting donations where they should be going. So yeah, that's the idea of Hope.
Amazing. And as always, I will have all of the links in the description below. So anybody that wants to follow Hope, PRC, or donate, most importantly, especially at the moment, all of that will be down there so that people can find you. Adam, as always, thank you so much for the work that you do. And also thank you for everything that you've done for everyone over in Turkey who you've been able to help so far. And we will speak again on another thing
Yeah,
very, very
it's a
soon.
pleasure. It's not about me. It's about my team and the volunteers who I have to give everything credit to. Incredible, incredible volunteers who are selfless and just want to get there. And the amount of people who want to volunteer for us, seeing what we do, is just unbelievable. We can't keep up with the applications, and so I have to give all the credit to the team, PRC, behind the scenes admins and social media people and the volunteers on the ground, just the best. They're the best, honestly, hands down best. So thank you. It's a pleasure again, like always.
Amazing. We will speak soon.
Thanks, mate.
As I mentioned in the interview with Adam, I reached out to a number of the organizations and let them know that I was working on this story. IFRC, the International Federation of the Red Cross, was the only organization that actually responded to me. So before I give you their response, I thought I should let you know the questions that I put to them. According to documents on your website, you have raised $19,152,630 of a $350 million goal. How much of that money has been used for assistance on the ground to date? What percentage of those donations will be used for the people of Turkey? What percentage of donations goes back to IFRC? What regions are you working in? And how many employees and volunteers do you have working on the ground in Turkey? This is their response. The International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, is the world's largest humanitarian network. Our secretariat supports local Red Cross and Red Crescent action in more than 192 countries around the world, bringing 15 million volunteers together for the good of humanity. In Turkey, the IFRC works in partnership with the Turkish Red Crescent to serve communities impacted by crisis and disaster. Our fundraising efforts are ongoing. As funding is confirmed, we share the results of our fundraising efforts online in the spirit of transparency and accountability. And as you can see, the website is listed. It is evident that the needs of people affected by the earthquake are well beyond funding that has been raised to date. We have said since day one that no one agency or organization can do this alone. It requires a team effort. The IFRC is working in partnership with the Turkish Red Crescent, which has been leading for delivering urgent life-saving aid to the people of Turkey in all 11 affected provinces. The IFRC has some 100 staff in Turkey working alongside over 3,200 staff and volunteers from the Turkish Red Crescent that have been responding since a devastating earthquake struck on February 6th. Thus far, with the support of the IFRC, the Turkish Red Crescent has provided 155 million hot meals to people affected, 140,000 households are receiving cash voucher assistance, 68,000 are receiving psychosocial support, and 14,000 have received critical health care. IFRC acts in accordance to its fundraising policy as one of the world's largest humanitarian organizations. The International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement is proud of the high regard in which it is held by both the recipients of its services and its support. All funds raised will be used for the purpose for which they were raised and within a reasonable time frame. Program and service support recovery cost amount to a total of 6.5% and relate to essential shared services related to project implementation. So that was a full unedited response that I received from IFRC. I didn't edit anything. I've given it to you as I got it. I decided to ask one last question. You state in your response below that you are delivering aid to people in all 11 affected provinces. The person I did the interview with stated that he has traveled to all of the affected provinces while they're working. A lot of his work was done in the Maras region, and that he would speak with law enforcement and locals, and that he did not see any of the big charities on the ground working. And when law enforcement working the areas were asked about who was there helping the citizens of Turkey, they also said they weren't seeing any of the people working for the larger charities on the ground. Do you have a response to that statement? So this is their response to that last email. Turkish Red Crescent has been actively assessing the needs and helping those in need from the first day of the disaster with its staff and volunteers. As the earthquakes impacted a very wide geographical area, it might naturally have taken some time to get deployed to some remote areas in the first hours of the disaster. However, Turkish Red Crescent has helped millions of affected people in the areas we mentioned in our previous email since day one. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks for watching.